Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name.
Thanks for tuning in to Armor of God again. Now this is not going to be a long video, just a quick one. But there are two clips I want to share here with you. Just a couple of days ago I shared with you a YouTube Shorts of Father Iannuzzi explaining to us the virtue of simplicity. Now due to the time of YouTube Shorts, I was not able to share the whole thing, only the highlight. So I thought it's a good idea to share it here in a long-form video instead. Listen to this.
It is the virtue of simplicity, which we lose when we become too intellectual, when we try to outsmart the Pope or God's simple injunction that we obey him and leave the rest up to God. When we start to get too smart for ourselves, now we lose our focus. About the importance of simplicity. My daughter, simplicity fills the soul with grace to the point of overflowing. So if one wanted to constrain grace within himself, it could not be done. Just as the Spirit of God, because he is most simple, diffuses everywhere without effort or strain, but rather naturally, so the soul who possesses the virtue of simplicity diffuses grace into others without even realizing it. Our will performs the first act, and since the first act God does is to communicate the triune will as the complete act, as the soul's sanctification, on seeing himself rejected he groans with inexpressible groanings. And in your childlike simplicity say to him, Spirit Sanctifier, hurry. I implore you, I beg you to let everyone come to the knowledge of your will, so that in knowing it they may love it and welcome your prime act in their complete sanctification, which is your holy will. Now, the virtue of simplicity aids in not only diffusing grace into other souls naturally and to the unawares of the possessor of simplicity, but it fills the soul with grace. And this is important. Simplicity is a great virtue that enables the soul not to be caught up by pride, intellectualism, rationalism, knowing-better-than-thou-ism. Simplicity is a simple path that avoids wasted time. All right. Now, Jesus reminds us that those who live the life of simplicity will be spared in the day of chastisement. Think of that. Fire will strike evildoers, but those who are good and live a life of simplicity will be spared. Wow, that is powerful. So why are we waiting? We should just rush toward this virtue of simplicity and embrace it. Simplicity doesn't mean simplistic. Childlike doesn't mean childish. All right? Certainly, we are aware of the trappings of Satan, the deceptions of the evil ones in and outside of the church. But that is no excuse for one to start to impugn the Holy Father, to blame him for things he didn't do, or to consider not listening to him. That is a huge deception, and it comes from Satan. As an exorcist, I can assure you of this. It is a subtle, but nonetheless powerful trap for those who are Christian. Simplicity, remember, makes that which the tongue tries to articulate easy. Try, for example, to explain the Trinity. Not even St. Augustine could do that effectively. No saint in the history of mankind, including Thomas Aquinas, Bernard of Clairvaux, Francis de Sales, Maximus the Confessor, however great they were, could effectively explain the Trinity. They could, in some small measure, begin to explain it, but they could never completely explain it. And this is why the Trinity is called a mystery.
And then, for my second clip, I want to share this interview I had with Father Deacon Anthony Dragani from the Greek Eastern Catholic Church. Now, during the interview, we talked about the impact of Onlyfans on our society, and we also talked about the addiction to pornography and masturbation. Listen to this.
The rise of something like OnlyFans has been pretty detrimental because it's kind of taken prostitution to the virtual level in a way that's easily monetizable, and it hasn't entirely taken away the stigma, but in some circles it's made it seem more almost respectable. Oh, I can pay for my college education with your OnlyFans. Or I've seen women online in different news articles and whatnot saying how they're able to provide for their families so well through OnlyFans. And what's happening ultimately, though, is they're engaged in a type of prostitution. They may not be having direct sex with their viewers. Some are, but they may not necessarily be. But what's going on is they're selling their bodies, they're selling their private person, so to speak. They're selling something, important and sacred, their sexuality, for monetary gain. And that's destructive to them. And that's destructive to the people who view this stuff and become addicted to it. I mean, ultimately, the reason that people are becoming millionaires off of OnlyFans is because pornography is addictive. Um, Again, it may not be an addictive substance like heroin, but it fosters an addictive behavior, which is lust, running to fantasy as opposed to dealing with reality. And a lot of men become so hooked on this, they need to get the next high. And oftentimes, the next high has to be something different than what they saw before. They're always looking for variety. So very often, these women who are on OnlyFans, they get more and more extreme themselves. Again, I'm not an expert on this, but I saw an article maybe a few months ago on a news site about some young woman in England who decided that she wanted to, I guess, outperform other women on OnlyFans and had some sort of crazy stunt where she apparently had 100 men line up to be with her at once over like a 24-hour period. And I mean, just reading about that was shocking. And apparently, the article said that at the end of this, somebody filmed a documentary about this, but at the end of it, apparently she just broke down crying in tears because on a certain level, she was harmed by this, and she knew she was harmed by this. But that platform and the money that comes with it, I think, encourages the women and men involved to become more and more extreme. Because again, people who are ensnared by pornography are oftentimes looking for the next level, the next high, and they're looking for more variety, which again leads to more extreme situations and scenarios. So yeah, it's a horrible thing. I mean, ultimately, the people who are profiting off of this, those makers of pornography who are profiting, I think they're called creators on OnlyFans, they're profiting off of exploiting people's addictions. And of course, there are the big companies behind things like OnlyFans and other pornography sites who are making billions and billions of dollars off of exploiting people. It's a sad cycle all around. And I think it's doing immeasurable damage to our society. Say one more thing about the pornography and masturbation. It's very possible for a person to be so enslaved to this they feel hopeless and they don't know how to stop. Oftentimes I encounter people who stop for a while and they try and they just can't, and they go back to it again and again and again. And after a while they feel hopeless and give up. What I've found is that one of the keys to succeeding in this is having some sort of accountability to another person. So I always urge people, if they're struggling with this addiction, to find maybe some friends they can talk to about it and hold each other accountable. But beyond that, I've known people who have had a lot of success with 12-step programs. There are 12-step programs for people who are addicted to pornography or people who are addicted to lust. And these programs are oftentimes a huge, huge help because the 12 steps are ultimately about surrendering to God. That's at the very core of the 12 steps is surrendering to God, which I think is at the core of Christian spirituality even. So very often the 12-step programs help a person to have a structured way of making the surrender to God, but also it connects them with other people who can hold them accountable, who they can work with. And for a lot of people, they need that accountability and they need that support offered by a 12-step program in order to break free from these addictions. And these days, back in the old days, if you wanted to go to a 12-step group, you had to find one in person. And while some 12-step groups are abundant, like every small town has an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, 12-step programs for people with sexual addictions or pornography addictions are harder to find. You find them in big cities, but small towns, you don't typically find that. But you can find these meetings online now through Zoom. Two of the programs I've heard of that have a lot of success, from what I've been told, are SA, Sexaholics Anonymous, and another one is SAL, which is SA Lifeline. And both of those programs are known to have helped a lot of people, probably thousands, if not more people, find freedom from these addictions. And if you look online, you can find these meetings in your local area. And if not, you can find Zoom meetings you can sign up for. And I would urge anyone to do that, because oftentimes getting help through a 12-step program is the best way to break free from these addictive behaviors.
And the good thing about this channel being already more than 2 years old now, it means I can refer to a lot of the old videos I've released before whenever I see someone making a claim on YouTube or anywhere else. And one such claim is some people saying that the Antichrist will be the Pope. Well, listen to this again, a clip I've shared with you 2 years ago.
Not the Pope, no. Nowhere in hagiographic or patristic or scriptural literature is the Pope ever associated with the personage of the Antichrist, nowhere. First and foremost, we have to distinguish Antichrist, okay? Antichrist has 4 different definitions. There is the scriptural definition of Antichrist that's only found once in the New Testament by John in his letter. He says that anyone who denies that Jesus is the Christ is the Antichrist. Okay? So this is not limited to an individual, it's anybody. That's the biblical Antichrist. It can apply to anybody. The second interpretation, meaning of Antichrist, is found in the patristics, the writings of the church fathers, where here it's a male individual, a tyrant, who usurps power, is materially wealthy and exceeding wealth, and is an inimical toward the church. In the Old Testament, the Kahal Yahweh, the Jewish people that brought us to the Christian faith through Christ, the Messiah. And it's a male individual. Why do I say this? It's also found in Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, but he doesn't mention Antichrist. He says man of iniquity, the man of lawlessness, the abomination of desolation, as does Daniel. But he doesn't mention Antichrist. We have to be specific here with the terms we use. So Paul, when he's speaking of this man of iniquity, he says that he will sit himself in the throne of God and declare himself God. Now this word, hestekota in Greek, he will sit himself, is the third person singular for the male gender. He will sit himself. So it's a male individual, this man of iniquity. Even says man, right? And he will sit himself, okay, in the throne of God and declare himself God. That's the patristic interpretation of Antichrist. It's a male tyrant. Paul calls it, you may call it a male abomination of desolation, man of lawlessness, iniquity, etc. Then there's the mystical understanding of Antichrist, which again applies to a male individual. Several people speak about this, or collectively to several individuals. In the writings of 2 mystics, for example, it speaks of 2 eschatological antichrists, 2 male individuals. One is known as the false prophet, found in Revelation chapters 20, 19-20, known as the false prophet, who works with a series of pagan nations known as the beast. This comes before this period of 1,000 years of peace that John speaks about in Revelation. 1,000 years is a long period of time, not necessarily limited to exactly 1,000 years, but necessarily a long period of time. Then after this period of peace, Satan is released from his confinement. And then there emerges another mysterious evil individual, male, named Gog, who works with the evil nations known as Magog. So here you have 2 male eschatological antichrist figures in 2 male human beings. Now that's the mystical interpretation. So you have the scriptural, the patristic, the mystical, and then you have the magisterial. And Cardinal Ratzinger says that Antichrist wears many masks in many generations, meaning it's not applicable to just one male person. It could be King Epiphanes, Nero, Valerian, all these who persecuted Christians, Diocletian, or it could apply to other people that killed masses of people in the church and outside the church through history, and it could apply to the future. That's the magisterial interpretation of Antichrist. So see how complicated the answer is to your question. When we say that Rome will be the seat of the Antichrist, who are we speaking about, right? One person, several people? Here again, Mary at La Salette does not mention the Pope at all. She never mentions the Pope. What people who are not conversant in mystical theology fail to acknowledge is the simple distinction between the city of Rome, which goes beyond the Vatican, well beyond the Vatican, and the Catholic hierarchy, which is not limited, it goes well beyond Rome. Okay? So it's a simplistic mistake that they make. They say, oh, Rome, that must mean the Vatican. It doesn't mean the Vatican. Does it include the Vatican? Yes, But it doesn't mean it's just the Vatican. So when they say that the Antichrist will sit himself in Rome, they say, oh, that has to be the Vatican. Well, show me where the Blessed Mother said that. You won't find it anywhere. Nor will you find anywhere in any prophecy approved by the Church that the Pope will become the Antichrist, because he's not going to be the Antichrist. Jesus gave Peter, meaning him and all his successors, the keys to the kingdom. On this rock of the papacy, he founded his church. So God will never allow the papacy to be perverted by a pope who is an Antichrist. It will never happen. There have been over 40 anti-popes in the church, but guess what? Not one of them was a real pope. They were all imposters usurping the Petrine powers illegitimately because they were never elected in a valid conclave. So these anti-popes really were never popes. They were people claiming to be the pope and never were the pope. Never has a validly elected pope ever been associated with the Antichrist. Never. It may be within the hierarchy, but that's not the pope. Okay, the pope will never be, God will never allow that to happen. Now, again, is this Antichrist figure in the hierarchy? Is he in the laity? Is he in the world somewhere else? I put out a book entitled Antichrist in the End Times, in which I show historically every Antichrist ever identified has always come from the Middle East area. And I show you that in the scriptures, where it talks about Ag, King Ag, Agag, which God comes from in the book of Revelation. They're all connected. He's a male tyrant. He always has these three qualities. A male tyrant, inimical toward the church. He hates the church. He wants to destroy the church. And three, he is excessively wealthy. He usurps his power, excessively wealthy, hates the church, and is a male tyrant.
That will be all for the video this time. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here again, and hopefully all of you have learned a lot from this video. Remember, if there's any feedback or suggestion, please let us know in the comments below. Anyway, if you like what we do and you'd like to support us, I left a link to our PayPal donation in the description box below, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your continuous support, contributions, and prayers. And until the next one, thanks again for watching, and may God bless you.
Man, I don't know who they think I am. I make minimum wage over here, man. I ain't dying for this.